Hello and welcome. I'm Lori Parziali, and I hope to encourage you today by reminding you of things that you probably already know. As you're heading back to school, you have a lot on your plate. You may have discovered some new curriculum that you want to try. There might be new sports teams or other family activities that will demand more and more of your attention. I hope my words today will be words of encouragement to you, words that will point you back to timeless truths. Sometimes the truths that we learn from God's word are so profound that we believe we will never forget them. Yet as time goes by, they fade. Has that happened to you? There are also life truths that seem much less profound, truths that we might need help remembering, truths that in the busyness of everyday life, we tend to let slip, or at least we forget to apply them to our daily lives. Sometimes these truths just need to be seen from a different perspective. That's what I hope to provide today, a different perspective on being interruptible. As homeschoolers, we have already chosen to prioritize our children over so many other things, things that might take time and energy that we choose to commit to our children instead. Our hobbies, maybe a second job or another income, the fulfillment of a college degree that we worked so hard for. We daily sacrifice these things for the greater calling of intentional parenting. We give our attention, at least most of it, for most of every day, to others. The model for how to live as Christians, of course, is Jesus. So he's the example I'm going to use today. I am going to bounce between past and present tense in my references to him today because I want to refer to him during his time on earth, but also as our eternal king. So, grammar folks, you can excuse me for that. Jesus is a lot of things. He was a very unexpected king. He was a compassionate healer, a patient teacher, and as we'll see, Jesus was interruptible, always. We understand that he had the most important mission while on earth, yet he continued to give his attention to those around him who needed it, and often on their schedule. We see his mother interrupt his timing when she brought to him the need for more wine at the wedding banquet. Yet Jesus did as Mary asked, though it was outside his attentions, because it didn't actually conflict with his plans. Jesus was interruptible. Someone needed something from him and honored him by asking for his help. Mary displayed her confidence in him and trusted him to take care of the problem for her. Have you ever considered that this interruption is very much like what we deal with each day as our Marys come to us asking for help, interrupting us with their needs, but honoring us with confidence and trust? Our children have well placed confidence that they matter to us. They trust that we will help them. They believe they're important enough to us that we would want them to come to us, even when it is an interruption. For those of you with older children, young children like 10 or older, do you remember the last time you picked her up and carried her? I'm not talking about a time that you carried her, but the last time. Her little hands were up in the air and she said, "Pick me up, carry me." Did you know it was the last time? Would you have cherished it a little bit more if you had known? What about those of you with teenagers? I hope you're still reading aloud to your kids. They never seem to get too old for that. But when was the last time they asked you to do it? And did you? Or were you too busy? Did you just think they can read after all? I know we're all busy. There's so many demands on us from every direction: school, sports practice, dinner, errands, laundry. Forget about me time. But the years are so short, and the needs of our children right now are usually pretty simple. Their greatest need can be summed up in one word: attention. In our paying attention to them, they understand that they matter, that they're valued. This attention may come with other implied tasks, but for the most part, giving our children our full attention is the thing that they want. It's the thing that confirms for them that they matter and that they're loved. You might be thinking, all I do is give them my attention. You're probably right. As I said at the beginning, we've given up a lot to homeschool our children, but there is still a lot that demands our attention, and that's normal. That's life. We give our children attention when we teach them, when we talk to them, when we take them places, and when we expect things from them. These are legitimate and valuable ways of giving attention to your children. But the thing that these all have in common is that we have chosen these opportunities. We decide when to teach, when to talk, when to receive feedback from our kids. This kind of attention is great and it's necessary. but it doesn't communicate the same things to your kids that another kind of attention does. What about giving them your full attention when they want you to, when it's inconvenient, when it's an interruption? What if, when someone came to him for healing, Jesus had said, "Not now, I'm in the middle of teaching"? That's outrageous, isn't it? Jesus personified the fruits of the Spirit and how he responded to the demands people constantly made on him. He was gentle and he was loving. He was moved by his compassion for the needs of those who came to him. He responded with his full and complete attention, regardless of what was on his to do list. He was the model of being interruptible. God has taught me many lessons through my children as they were growing. One vital lesson that changed the way I interacted with them was the understanding of the reality of the unexpected. Long life for our kids is what we all want, what we all expect, and possibly what we all take for granted, but it isn't a guarantee. In dealing with this reality, God forced me to become absolutely interruptible, and I'm so grateful He did. When the kids wanted to be carried, we as their parents looked at every time as though it might be the last time. Not because we were afraid of anything, but because we didn't want to miss anything. When they wanted to hear a story for the thousandth time, we didn't roll our eyes, but we thanked God for that one more chance to read to our kids. When they wanted to stay up late talking, we would never turn them down because one day they wouldn't ask anymore. Being tired the next day was collateral damage, but it was temporary. Basically, we said yes to them when they wanted our attention whenever we reasonably could. Giving them the attention they wanted from me when they wanted it is priceless for so many reasons. It allowed us to parent with fewer regrets. It showed our children that we listened to them, we valued them, and that means we loved them. It was evidenced by giving them appropriate attention when they felt like they needed it, rather than when it fit our schedule. They were never confused about our priorities. Our kids mattered, and they knew it. Personally, I had to let go of my obsession for organization, for checking boxes, and for sticking with a schedule that I felt like might be written in stone. What replaced those priorities was real life and genuine relationship with my children. I want to take some time now to look at our model for some examples of how he was interruptible. Following the news of John the Baptist's death, Jesus withdrew to be alone, yet the crowds followed him. When Jesus and his disciples landed on the shore, Jesus had compassion on the crowds and healed their sick. Even in the midst of his own loss and pain, he turned his attention to those in need whom he alone could help. As he went to be alone after hearing about John's death, Jesus needed the support of his heavenly Father in prayer. But even in this, he was interruptible. On his way down from the mountainside, a man with leprosy came to him for healing. Another time, as he entered into Jerusalem, a centurion came up to him asking for help for his servant. The lesson for us is this: we should expect interruptions along our way. When Jesus calms the storm, the disciples didn't just interrupt him, they actually woke him up. Our lesson: don't be surprised when your kids wake you up with their needs. You can sleep later. Then there were the men whose concern for their paralyzed friend motivated them to lower him into the house through the roof, right in the middle of Jesus' teaching. And how did he respond? With compassion. What does that teach us? Expect your kids to interrupt life, sometimes with actual material damage, but plan now to react with compassion. Another time Jesus was teaching, a synagogue leader came to request help for his daughter. Jesus adapts his plans to go where he's asked. While you're teaching your sweet children, be adaptable. Life is not our to do lists or our curriculum check boxes. It's all the little things that happen in between. While Jesus was on his way to help this man who first interrupted his teaching, he was interrupted again by the woman with the bleeding issue, who he then healed. I wonder how the first man felt. Was he worried that Jesus would arrive too late? Was he quietly thinking, hurry, hurry? Or was he trusting that Jesus knew his need and would answer his concerns at the right time? Jesus knows what we must get done, and he can be trusted with our time. Being distracted from the work that we have given ourselves to do is okay. It will be there when we get back to it. If there is something that is absolutely imperative that must be done, responding to our children with that truth is also loving. Saying out loud, "You're important to me, but I must take care of this first. Can you just wait 30 minutes?" And then go set a timer. In 30 minutes, your child will very likely have moved on to another activity, but it will make her feel special that you remembered to come back and ask what she wanted, even if she can't remember what that is. Right after this double interruption episode, Jesus went alone to a mountainside to pray, and the disciples got caught in another storm. Jesus responds to their needs even though they didn't ask. He came to them when they were afraid, leaving his own time of prayer to go to his friends. And then when they arrived safely on the other side, the crowds were back. Jesus willingly and consistently gave of himself and his personal time for those who needed him. He saw the disciples needed help and he was there for them, even though they didn't ask him for help. Being interruptible, you develop insight into your children that guides your heart to provide attention that they need, even when they don't ask. On the road to Tyre and Sidon, the Canaanite woman calls out after Jesus so much that the disciples just want her to leave them alone. But Jesus is ever interruptible and responds to her needs when she persists in spite of the disciples' outcry. There is, of course, a polite way to interrupt. So teach your children how to approach you in a way that's respectful for you and anyone that you're with. A small hand on your arm can be held while you wait for an appropriate moment to excuse yourself and give your full attention to your child. This teaches your children not only that you value them, but that you value others as well. They will learn that asking for attention is different than demanding it. They will also learn how to treat others with respect, to consider the needs of others and the blessing of patience as they wait for you to respond to them. In learning to be interruptible, we just need to consider our model, Jesus. He provides every scenario that we can experience and shows us how to react. One of the best scenarios of Jesus' interruptibility is when people brought their children to him and the disciples try to send them away. Jesus rebukes them, his friends, basically saying, "These children who want to be with me are the reason I am here in the first place." Our children are not an interruption. They are why we are here, and we have chosen the challenging path of homeschooling for them. A couple of times in Matthew 24, Jesus is alone, away from others, when the disciples try to come ask a question. Later, on the Mount of Olives, they find him again to ask questions. How wonderful it is that our children trust us enough to bring their questions to us. They're honoring us with their confidence, and that we can provide the answer that they need and that we care about their desire to discover that answer. My husband recently retired after 30 years in the Army. Once while he was deployed, the kids were just super needy because, of course, they were. They were little and they were suffering. I was dealing with the logistical difficulties that deployment always brings, in addition to the emotionally challenging experience of kids dealing with deployment, which is a lot like the grief process. But what I saw in my children needing so much from me during this time was that God was graciously allowing me to serve others rather than withdraw into my own suffering. I wonder if God gave his son the same kind of distraction with those who so desperately needed him right after John's death. In redirecting my attention to the ones who needed something from me almost constantly, God allowed me to experience his perfect care for me as I cared for my children. Helping others didn't minimize my own suffering in the same way Jesus' loss wasn't minimized by those he helped, but it benefited me to have a purpose, to have work to do that was outside myself. Finally, and most profoundly, Jesus was interrupted while he was in the process of providing eternal salvation for believers, the climactic goal of his earthly mission, his good work. It is then that the thief on the cross next to him asked to be remembered. Jesus wasn't too absorbed in his own tremendous agony to give attention and hope to the man who so desperately needed it. Imagine the comfort that that interruption provided for Jesus. Amid the mocking voices and the taunts of the crowd, this thief, in his request, reminded Jesus why he was suffering and gave him the opportunity to provide hope that he so desperately needed. Jesus only had 3 years with his disciples. We only have about 18 years with our children one on one. 18 years sounds like a long time, but it quickly gets filled with to do lists and practices and errands and have tos. Being interruptible isn't a have to, it's a get to. We get to choose our kids over mundane tasks that will eventually get done. We get to give our attention to the children God gave us and reap the benefits of their knowing that they're a priority for us. We get to enjoy experiencing the joy of the last time we got to pick them up or read to them because we value every time they ask. We get to say yes to them when they need attention, showing them that they matter and that they're loved. When we commit the work of each day to God and ask Him to order our time, we can trust Him with all the interruptions as well as our tasks. We can trust Him that what needs to get done will get done and that we can actually let go of all those other things. We can trade the mundane tasks and the to do lists of our daily lives for the special last moments with our children that we might otherwise miss because they look a lot like interruptions. If your schedule can't tolerate making time for interruptions, if you just can't imagine how you're going to get everything done if you don't maintain a tight control on your time, may I gently suggest that you consider Jesus' example of interruptibility and ask Him for help. If you must stick to your to do list or the boxes that you must check every day, then just put a new box on your list. Be interruptible. You might have to work hard at first to get that checked off each day, but the more you practice, the better you'll get, and then it'll be a habit. Your children need you alone in a unique way. Only you can help them understand the value that they have to you and to their Heavenly Father by responding when they need you. This is also the best way for you to demonstrate God's love for them because God is never too busy to give His attention to us when we need it. Have you ever felt you were an interruption to God? Of course not. And we don't want our children to feel that way with us. Interruptions are good. Jesus' whole life and ministry was one interruption after another. He is the model for being interruptible. Follow His example in this and enjoy every fleeting moment with the children that God has given you for this very, very short season. And may He richly bless you as you head back to school. Thank you.